4th Early Start Summer Webinar 2022. I am Zuli Vasquez, the Associate Manager of Early Head Start, joining us for the first time. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad you're here with us today. If you're interested, our webinars for the last 3 weeks were recorded and are available on our website. As you enter the Zoom room, please share in the chat your name and where you are Zooming in from. Before I introduce our guest today, I want to remind you that these Early Head Start webinars are part of our Early Head Start Rising campaign. If you would like to know more about the Early Head Start campaign, please visit our website. If you would like to know more about the website of the Early Head Start summer series, please, again, you have the link in the chat. Our webinar today is Human Superpower to Overcome Trauma. Our presenter today is Dr. Darleen Wodzenski. She's a mental health clinician from Georgia. She's an author, speaker, and interventionist with Orchard Human Services and Kinder College Christian School. She's an adjunct professor, member of Nova Southern University. She provides direct clinical and developmental services to individuals and families with autism, disorders of attachment, reactive attachment disorder, etc. She and her staff also serve children and adults with mental health challenges such as anxiety, depression, and trauma. Dr. Darleen provides professional training and development and is a consultant for education and mental health professionals. She holds credentials in general and special education. She's a qualified professional parent educator and is a certified trainer for early learning and childcare educators. She provides intervention services on a national basis. It's such an honor to have her present for us today. To the attendees, if you have questions, please put it in the chat. We will have some time to answer some questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Darleen, for being with us today. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you so much for having me here. Hi, everybody. So I love children, and I especially love the Head Start organization because the work that you do is so important for making bright and compelling futures available to children with high risk, high need, and who would otherwise have a challenge navigating the educational system. Today, we're talking about ways that we can use innate human superpowers, things that are already inside of us in order to overcome trauma. And the reason that I asked to talk about this today is because so many people are suffering from trauma based on events in recent history. We have had things happen in the course of humanity and in this country that we haven't seen in decades and even hundreds of years. So, as Zuli said, the topic today is human superpowers to overcome trauma. And when I share my credentials, it's not to impress anybody. It's just that if somebody wants to know what it is that I do and why I come from the perspective I do, I am in early childhood, I am in clinical mental health, and I'm a P through 12 certified teacher, and I teach developmental disabilities in a grad program at a university. So this work that you do is really important work to me, and the work that I do is to try to bring the best, the newest, the brightest, and the most effective strategies to the people who are out in the field on the ground taking care of our children. And I thank you all so much for the wonderful work you do. So today we're going to be taking a look at how traumatized children and adults basically can remain in a state of perpetual arousal, constantly scanning for the next danger or source of pain or suffering. And so we're going to take a look at a fluid trauma model. It's our model at our nonprofit that kind of goes with the flow so that we're not working against people's trauma. We're not making them work through their trauma. We're just going with the flow, and we're going to leverage these innate human superpowers because the human being was actually meant to be self-restoring, self-repairing, self-healing. And in doing so, while working with children, with ourselves, with our colleagues, with our supervisors, administrators, and the parents coming into the centers, we can ease the trauma of infants, children, and adults. Quick learning objectives. We're going to explore how trauma can change the brain. We're going to learn how trauma can cause anxiety and arousal. Arousal as in getting a little bit excited, getting higher energy. You're operating at a higher level of focus, burning more energy, maybe a little bit twitchy, heart racing, that sort of thing. We're going to learn about the human superpowers of restoration and recovery, and we're going to discover some fluid trauma practices that can promote recovery. The slides are available for you. Please go to the NHSA website afterwards, and you can download things, and there's other goodies there for you as well. You have the list of references, so if any of you are in grad school or undergrad and you need to bring some references in to represent something you learned here, the references are all there. You'll also find these slides and a couple other things that you'll have access to. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the impact of trauma on the brain. And the way we're going to do this today is, because we have an hour, we're going to zip through the learning. I'll stop on the things that are the most important, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So please go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and then we will have time to address them towards the end. So when a person is traumatized, the brain changes completely. This part of our brain, which is the higher order thinking, kind of sort of shuts down. That's our prefrontal cortex. The brain says, ooh, we're in trouble. We better redirect. So the blood flow is directed away. We have lower blood flow here, and the blood flow is directed to the back of the brain where we have our fight or flight response, that stress crisis response. And so that actually reduces the electrical activity down here, because as the blood flow is reduced, electrical activity is reduced. It's something that's called neurological downshifting. The individual is continuously scanning for danger or something that can cause some sort of pain or suffering. The individual will go into high alert with every hint of danger or pain. There could be a sound, a smell, a vibration, and the person is freaking out. And it's like, hey, it's the mailman. He just brought a big package. We don't have to be afraid. But you see that adult or that child just flinching. And traumatized individuals can remain in this state of perpetual arousal for hours, days, and months. And sometimes people working with children miss it. They're like, oh, that child is really high strung. No, the child is actually a very calm, relaxed, focused child who is just going through a trauma state. And so I'm hoping by doing this training, you'll start to get a clue as to when a child is just naturally energetic and maybe a little over focused on things versus when a child is actually suffering from that hyper arousal and hyper alertness that cause them to be very jumpy because something bad happened to them in the past and their brain doesn't want them to be caught unawares again. So basically, a traumatized person is in a state of emotional free fall. And it's not a pleasant feeling. And quite often they have a sense that they're just hanging on for dear life. Acting crazy in an upside down world, and they're driven by panic, fear, and mistrust. Quite often, especially the children, but even the adults can feel cut off, lost, and disconnected. They tend to be sensitized, overreactive, and irrational in the way they respond to the things in the environment that everyone else is handling without an issue. And on the outside, what do you see? Well, your guess is as good as mine. There are so many ways that people compensate for and handle stress and trauma. The person might actually act kind of calm but have a glazed over look, or they might be really twitchy and reactive, or they might be really intense and leaning in and not talking, or they may go into talkative mode and their mouth is going a mile a minute and they're not stopping. These are all the ways that trauma can look on the outside. And basically, the traumatized person may be feeling any of these things. I'm not going to read the whole list, but we've got everything there, right? They may be obnoxious, mistrustful, passive, cooperative, obedient. They may be bullying, unmotivated, lethargic, depressed, any of these things. There is no rule for how they're going to act. The only rule is what we know is going on the inside and what's happening to their brain. That is the part that we do know. And honestly, it takes years of training to even spot many cases of trauma because it's so easy to misconstrue the signs of trauma for the person being self-centered, over-focused, ADHD, jumpy, but those things may not be true. It may actually be a case of trauma. And because trauma happens on the inside, guess what? We have to stop the trauma where it lives. We have to find ways to get on the inside and make changes internally in the individual, whether child, adult, doesn't matter. And we do this by activating these human superpowers, these innate gifts that we all have of self-healing, self-repairing, and self-restoring. So we use these human superpowers, these innate gifts, to just kind of go with the flow of the trauma. And just like water will follow the path of least resistance, it'll flow downhill. We work with nature, not against it. We wouldn't be asking anyone in an early childhood setting to try to do like exposure to something that traumatizes the child, right? We're not doing that. We're doing something that's very loving and calming and working with the things on the inside that bring about a sense of calm and peace. And of course, all of you know, you wouldn't be here unless you all have black belts in love and in connection. The very first thing we need to do for anyone who's traumatized is promote a sense of safety and security. And if anyone remembers Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development, that first stage is trust versus mistrust. We have to help them trust by helping them feel safe and secure. And you all know how to do this. We do this by leaning in and making eye contact. We do this with a warm smile. We do this by using an engaging voice, by making sure we're paying attention to the tone of our voice. We don't want to be talking with a harsh voice or a really fast pressured voice. We want to talk in a more inviting voice. Maybe the voice goes up a little bit. There's a lilt to the sound. Even the sound of our voice matters. The gestures we're using, making sure that if there's a differential of power, we're much bigger. Maybe we sit down in a low chair before we talk about certain things with children. There are times if a child is traumatized or even an adult is traumatized, I will sit in a low chair or on the floor and have them sit high. Let them be in the place of power. These are the ways that we show that profound respect for another person and that love and connection to promote their sense of safety and security. So start when you think you see someone who may be in a trauma state, start thinking about all the incredible ways that we can use touch, kinesthetic tactile stimulation. Now, we would touch a hand. Maybe if it's a baby, we would touch a foot. We might do a fist bump. We can do shoulder pressure. There are wonderful ways to use that power of human love and connection to articulate a message of caring, protection, and safety so that the child or the adult can feel a sense of trust. And of course, we want to promote attachment and bonding, right? Um, when we bond with another person, when we connect with another person, they suddenly feel like they're part of something. And one of the best ways to do that in early childhood is through play. When we play with children in a meaningful way, they both get to have a sense of bonding and connecting with the people with whom they're playing, their peers or the teacher's assistants, but they also start to have a sense of life satisfaction. When people are suffering from trauma, some of their happy and joy goes away and their life satisfaction is on the decline. Trauma oftentimes is associated with depression. The happiness goes away. People can become something called anhedonic, where they're not really feeling. So, especially with children, but even with adults, we want to promote play and active engagement. So, we're making sure that we're connecting, we're helping them bond with others by having shared activities, and we're helping them reinvent and rediscover the joys of life. So, we're increasing life satisfaction. And of course, all of you know, you have black belts in this as well, sensory stimulation to help them ground and focus. That's one of our human superpowers, our senses to smell, to touch, to hear, to taste, to see. We can appeal to all these senses. And in actuality, if a child is traumatized or any person is traumatized, one of the first things we can do is say, hey, do you smell that? I think they're making cookies for lunch. Do you smell that? Or you could use an aromatherapy and say, ooh, which of these smells safe to you? Or you could say, let's listen to some music and decide which one feels safe, feels happy, feels calm. And when we engage them in what's going on, if you have a child or an adult who's in a total state of panic, traumatized panic, you can simply say, hey, can you look around? Tell me what you see. What do you hear? What do you smell? And be quiet and let them process. Just encouraging another person, a child, a teen, an adult, a colleague, a director, a parent, encouraging them if they're in a state of stress, distress, and trauma overwhelm to notice what's going on. Oh, that's a nice fabric. What does that feel like? Connecting them to sensory processing will help take them out of that stress and distress mode. It's very powerful. But you also know that we touch in order to help them ground and calm and focus. And so we'll use sensory aids, very purposefully bringing in tools and resources for them to touch and use and manipulate in order to have that sense of calm and peace. And sometimes we even have to distract them a little bit. And of course, if you're using something like a wonderful slime with little bits of pieces and glue in it, and they're finding the little beads, that can actually calm and delight a child. And again, that sensory experience can help distract them from that sense of overwhelm and that trauma response and kind of get them back to being more centered and calm. And I know everyone these days is exploring mindfulness. It turns out that yoga and other things like Qigong or Tai Chi really teach distress tolerance. Distress tolerance is the number one thing that people suffering from an excess trauma response need to learn, because they are so distressed by the trauma event, the memory of the trauma, the feelings in their body from remembering and thinking about the trauma, that they can't handle the distress. And that's when you see them start to freak out and get out of control. But when we ask them to do a yoga posture, and maybe they have to bend over and touch the floor or stretch and reach to the side or reach for the stars, it can stretch, it can be a little ouchy, not the most comfortable all the time, but they're staying focused, they're imagining where they want their body to be, and they're sticking with it. They're tolerating the distress of being in a yoga posture. Turns out yoga is the number one most effective tool for teaching distress tolerance, which is a mindfulness practice. And as people learn that I'm not going to go to pieces, I'm not going to blow up, I'm not going to die, I'm not going to cease to exist if I have distress in my body, then all of a sudden you can start to talk them through and help them work it through and kind of get focused and centered and come back to earth. Now, Qigong is a form of like a precursor to martial arts. It is the precursor to Tai Chi. It's moving energy. Tai Chi, of course, you also have the 8 brocades and the 8 treasures. These are all movement-based things that are more somatic or body-centered, but they are also mindfulness practices. And I cannot encourage you enough to find ways to bring these into your experiences with young children. I just want to caution you. We're not talking goat yoga. We're not talking cosmic yoga. There are some really fun and engaging ways that people offer some classes and, online internet access to these activities. But that's not what we're talking about here, because then that would be a fun, engaging thing that totally takes away the mindful part of staying focused, being in the posture, modeling the particular way of standing or sitting or stretching or reaching, and then having the child imagine that they're doing it in their mind and having them stay with it. So we want a calm experience. May only have to be for 30 seconds or a minute at a time, but it's a calm, focused mindfulness activity, not one of those energetic yoga classes or goat yoga classes that are kind of quirky and interesting, but they don't get the job done. And of course, breath is amazing. Sometimes with some children, we can actually get them to breathe with us. There are so many fun ways, like we can teach them a box breath in, hold, out, hold, right? We can do fun things like that. But sometimes they're so stressed out and traumatized that we have to trick them. And one of the great ways to trick them is to give them like a pinwheel, or have them smell a flower, or have them blow bubbles. There are lots of ways that we can engage children or even adults in breath work that will help undo some of that trauma response and help calm the brain. And of course, creativity is fabulous. And all of you working with young children, again, all know about how to bring creativity into that learning and play space. It is absolutely critical that we help the children reconnect with their creativity, because when individuals go through trauma, again, they sometimes lose their passion for life. They lose that joie de vivre, that they become anhedonic, or they don't have as many feelings. So we want to get them reconnected with their creativity. And there are so many wonderful ways that we can combine the creative activities with some sensory things, like maybe doing finger painting or toe painting. Lots of fun things that we can do to get the child's brain activated. And the more we get the person's brain engaged in creative activities, again, the more we tend to calm down those stress and trauma responses. And the imagination is huge. The imagination is one of the most powerful tools that we have. We like to take all of our clients, even the adults who have any type of trauma whatsoever, and have them imagine the thing that is the most calming, assuring, safe. It doesn't matter if it's a human person, if it's a superhero, a cartoon, if it's a magical creature, a unicorn. It could be a guinea pig with a unicorn horn and maybe a fluffy tail. It could be a magic wand. It doesn't matter. It could be something from Harry Potter. But we encourage everyone to imagine something that invites the feeling of safety and trust and being protected and happy, and have them imagine it, draw it, sing about it, dance about it, color it, paint it, talk about it, share the pictures with other people. And after a while, we can teach children and adults to be able to go within to whatever that image is, whatever that safe, protected image is, and automatically turn on really good feelings of being safe and protected and connected and loved and cared for. And in that moment, we're actually helping the individual calm down production of stress hormones like cortisol and epinephrine, and actually turn on the production of like social bonding hormone like oxytocin. And by the way, when we do that, when we make a human connection with someone, or when we help them connect to their imagination so that they're feeling in their imagination that they're in a place in their mind where they're safe and protected, as long as they're feeling the feeling, it doesn't matter if it's generated from their imagination, they will make the happy hormones and neurotransmitters that go along with those emotional states. And when you produce a happy neurotransmitter or a happy hormone like oxytocin, automatically the body's levels of cortisol, which is one of our main stress hormones, is going to drop. So making human connection and using the imagination to connect to feelings of safety, confidence, protection, love, caring, being cared for, will automatically make a positive shift in the individual's neurotransmitters and hormones. It's amazing. It's like the body's internal pharmacy. And then this one is huge. We love to encourage superhero play. We read stories about superheroes. We have the children either talk about the superhero whom they love or create their own superhero. We'll have them co-author a book on their own superhero. We'll have them dress up as superheroes. If there's a thing that happens in class, maybe a conflict, we'll say, well, gosh, who has a superhero idea for how they could have solved that problem or avoided it in the first place? And we constantly encourage the children to start thinking in terms of superhero, because in our society, the superhero is the one that always has something to save the day. So why not help every child with whom we work, every parent whose child we care for, every colleague, every director, every school bus driver, every mail delivery person, every Amazon person? How about we encourage everyone we come in contact with to look inside and find their own superhero self and engage in superhero thinking? Because all of us can go to the next level and find better ways to engage in situations to produce better outcomes. Why not start teaching the children at a very early age? There's a funny way that we do this that actually gets children to engage in metacognition. Metacognition is being in charge of our thinking selves. So we like to call it being in charge of driving our own thinking bus. Just this morning, I have a child, she's only had a few sessions, suffered from intense anxiety. We taught her how she could be in charge of her own thinking bus, and already her anxiety is almost gone. So through superhero play, we can say, you can use your superhero thinking self to be in charge of the thoughts you have, the things you say, the way you treat other people, the way you respond, and you can make life better for yourself and for your classmates. And this is a very powerful way that we use the paradigm of superheroes, which is very popular in society right now, to help children be happier, be better, cope, and overcome traumas and tragedies in their lives. And of course, I already mentioned metacognition, but we bring mindfulness and metacognition to the children in very overt ways. And I want to be clear, we teach mindfulness to 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds. I know it might sound amazing, but we do it through play. We have dolls and we have puppets. We have all sorts of amazing tools that we use, and we engage the children in fantastic conversations. We role play with them. We pretend. I have a whole basket of finger puppets over here. We get the children to practice mindfulness and metacognition through play by modeling it ourselves and then encouraging them to try it on themselves. Or I might say, hey, you know what? Bongo was really sad today. He's scared because there was a storm last night. What can you do to help him feel better? And then the children will say, well, Bongo, you have to think about your superhero self. And the children will talk the puppets or the dolls through solving their own problems. This is a brilliant way that we get even young children to start resolving their own problems and reduce their own trauma responses. And meditation is huge. Teaching meditation actually is not a big deal. And anybody who wants to learn how to teach children meditation, reach out to me and I'll do a special class for everybody because it actually is very simple, but it is huge and powerful. It's evidence-based. We actually have done research and we can prove that we can teach meditation to young children. And I'll give you an example. One of the ways I teach them to meditate is to imagine that their mind is like a clear blue sky. And then if a thought pops in, the thought kind of floats across the blue sky like it's maybe a cloud. And we say, well, gosh, it's okay that the thought is there, but we're meditating right now. So we want that thought to go away. So how about we shoot it with a laser and it turns into sparkles and fireworks? The children love it. That's only one of a number of ways. We offer children a number of different meditation techniques, and we teach them the one that they seem to like, the one that they have the greatest affinity for. I had a client who was 4 years old who'd suffered some rather dramatic trauma, and the thoughts of the trauma would get in this little guy's brain while he was at school, while he was trying to fall asleep, while he was playing with his family, and it was ruining his life. And I taught him how to just blow up the thoughts he didn't like and turn them into beautiful, sparkly fireworks. There was a day that he had a really rough time, and his parents talked him through the meditation doing the fireworks. The next day, he called me and he said, oh my God, he said, thank you for the fireworks. And I choke up every time I say this. A 4-year-old who suffered severe trauma and abuse learned how to meditate and now knows how to make his intrusive thoughts, the thoughts of the unhappy traumatic event, blow up into sparkly fireworks so that he can get back to his life and be a happy, well-adjusted kid. This stuff is powerful and it's real. And if you're not familiar with how to do it, our nonprofit loves sharing that information. This is an easy thing to do, and children can be learning it from when they're even 2 years old. We can engage 2-year-olds in teddy bear yoga and smelling, doing breath work, smelling flowers, or blowing into either blowing bubbles outdoors or blowing into a pinwheel. And we can teach them to meditate just by showing them little pictures of a happy thing and having them imagine it. So there's a very natural progression of skills that we can introduce from a very early age that moves children quickly into the realm of being able to meditate, practice mindfulness, metacognition, and take charge of their own thinking bus. And of course, free time is huge. And I know everyone at Head Start knows this. Even though the facilities are often busy and bustling, we have to create spaces within the learning environment and spaces within the day for children to just chill out. They need to lay back and look up at the sky. They need to lay under a tree and look at the leaves moving in the breeze. They need to notice the birds. They need to listen to the chirping, or maybe the chirping of the frogs. Or if they're in the city, they need to listen to the honking of the horn and the sound of the taxi cabs going by. People need free time, unstructured time, so the brain can reorganize itself and do its special work. If we don't give them some free time structured into each day, then all of this other work we talked about won't get a chance to take root and take hold and really help the individual grow and learn and move forward the way they need to. And something else that I want to mention is peak experiences. Now, this might be a nebulous concept for little children, but people get a benefit from a peak experience. Now, that doesn't mean you can take all of your kids out to a mountain and go climb a mountaintop together. I get that you can't do that, but you might be able to recreate it by playing King of the Hill by having a pile of sand. You might be able to show them a video or have them draw pictures and pretend that they're drawing themselves on top of a mountain. We can do it through artwork. We can do it through dance. We can pantomime. We can role play. We can watch a video. There are so many ways we can expose children to peak experiences. So a peak experience is one that's going to fill them with awe, inspiration, wonder. They're going to be fascinated, engaged, enthralled. And when we do that, again, we are actually turning on within their bodies powerful biochemistry that is nature's own pharmacy of positive hormones and neurotransmitters that will move them away from the trauma state and towards a state of focus, life satisfaction, appreciating what's going on around them, sensory awareness, and then connecting to the people around them. It's really powerful stuff. And of course, nature. Nature is huge. There is actually a therapy called foresting, like for real. You have your depressed client go walk in the forest, and research shows that for a certain number of people, it's going to dramatically increase their sense of life satisfaction and their engagement in life. In other words, it'll make some of the depression go away. It's a real thing. I understand not all facilities have access to nature in a forest in an obvious way, but we can bring in plants. We can maybe have a pet visit. We can show them videos. We can have flowers outside and have everybody walk around and smell the flowers. There are so many wonderful ways that we can bring nature in. We can bring in pine boughs around the holiday season and let them smell the pine odor. There are lots of ways to bring nature into the child's environment in order to promote that sense of ease and calm that comes with engaging with nature. And then, of course, there's heart-centeredness. And I hope all of you can join me right now. I want to show you something that is so simple to do. And I hope everyone, all of you, will be able to do this even with your classes. We take two hands. Can everybody join me who's with me, please, right now? Can we have two hands? And we're going to take one hand. We're going to put one on the chest. And this is a real thing. I'm asking you to please do this with me. And one on the forehead. And I want you to realize that you are both the one touching and you are the one being touched. So move your hands on and off, adjust the weight on your chest and on your forehead, and pay attention. I am the one feeling myself being comforted by those hands. And then in the next moment, I am the hands comforting this forehead and this chest. And move it around and focus on feeling the love of the touch and then touching to share love until you start to feel that bump in your heart, that feeling that you have when you look at a baby, when you look at a puppy, when you look at a kitten. Move it around. And if you can't find it here, please practice this later. This is one of the most powerful things that any of us can do. And I'll tell you more about it. I call this head and heart holding. If you were able to, and can anyone show a hand if they were able to feel the bump? Because I was actually able to have a sense of love. I was feeling love and connection to all of you because I know that we're a class of, dozens of people coming together, learning and sharing, and that all of us love working with children. Trust me, you wouldn't be here. Early childhood folks don't get paid enough. They wouldn't do this unless they love what they do, because all of you are brilliant and wonderful and could be doing other things. You're here for the love. I felt it. Did anyone else feel it? Let me just look through here. Did anyone else? Can you put your hand up? Did anyone else generate a little feeling of love or connection or caring? So please practice this one. This is huge. Let me see. Carmen, thank you, Carmen, so much. I really appreciate it. Carmen was able to feel it. Anybody else? I'm just going through here to see if anyone else did. Amy, did you feel anything at all? Did anything come up for you? Didn't feel it? Okay. And of course, this is an unusual situation, right? We're connecting through Zoom on your lunch break while you're at work. It's not exactly a safe, protected environment. I'm in my office. I'm as safe and protected as can be. But please do practice this. I'm going to tell you more about this. This winds up being one of the most powerful things you can do. You might think I'm joking, but let me explain what I'm talking about. There is something called heart rate variability, or HRV. And it basically is an efficiency rating of our cardiovascular system, just like we talk about the efficiency of motor vehicles by talking about their miles per gallon, right? Like, oh, wow, I got like 60 miles per gallon. Well, we have an efficiency rating and it's called HRV, heart rate variability. Sounds kind of technical, right? What does that got to do with a bunch of trauma and little kids and Head Start? Well, heart rate variability is this efficiency rating for the heart that's strongly correlated with, get this, mental, emotional, and physical factors of health and well being. Whoa. If we increase our own heart rate variability, we can, for ourselves, increase our mental and emotional well being. It tends to reduce anxiety and depression. It tends to make people a little bit more focused, like you might be a little bit smarter studying or taking a test. You might be able to retain and recall information better if you're having to take a test or write a paper or you're in grad school or whatever. It also promotes a sense of well being. So we even see an increase in overall physical health as well as emotional and mental health. So now I hope I have your attention. This is the real deal. This is where everybody needs to be. If you're working with young children and the people who are serving and living and raising young children, we need to focus on heart rate variability. So basically, heart rate variability, or HRV, provides a metric or a measurement by which we can evaluate factors that cause stress and dysfunction in infants and children and adults, while explaining how that heart-centeredness, that loving heart-centeredness and loving kindness can relieve stress and suffering and improve overall well-being, mental and physical. This is really powerful stuff. So basically, here's what happens. When an individual, when an adult, anyone, it doesn't have to be an adult, but it's usually the adults who figure it out first. When they're able to optimize their heart rate variability, then they are able to basically broadcast that. So the children in your care, the children in your classroom, the children in your center are going to read your heart rate variability. They actually mimic the brain patterns and the heart rate variability of the adults who care for them. That's why if you've ever seen an anxious, distressed parent come in and then the child walks in and they are just as anxious and distressed as the parent. Well, was it genetic? Well, it could be, but usually it's not. Usually it's just a learned behavior. It turns out that if you take caregivers and children and put them through something stressful and put them in a functional MRI machine and take a picture of how their brain is responding, however the adult's brain will respond to a stressful situation, like a dog coming to bite them or a loud siren going off or the sound of gunshots, however the parent responds, the baby, a 6-month-old, a 9-month-old, a 2-year-old, the same brain centers in the baby will light up as light up in the adult. So whatever the brain's pattern of emotional responsiveness is to stressful things, the baby will mirror. So can you imagine, for every stressed out child in your school or your program that has a stressed out parent, you have to override that. You have to take charge. And one of the things I learned, especially when I was teaching special ed, I didn't have trouble handling so many kids that other teachers couldn't handle. I was the one who I was like the cleanup crew. I was the janitor of the children. Like, Miss Darleen, can you come to the cafeteria? And they had a group of children they couldn't handle, but I didn't have trouble handling them. It wasn't until I studied this heart rate variability that I saw the difference. I just didn't let them bother me. I knew they were children in distress, and I loved them all so much anyway. They knew that I cared about them. I would calm myself down, make sure I stayed calm and focused, and the children were able to follow. If there's not an adult broadcasting heart rate variability, heart brain coherence, if you're not broadcasting that and you're not showing how you use a calm, focused brain, we do not want to use the trauma centers. We do not want an overactive amygdala and hippocampus having a stress trauma response. We want a calm brain. We want to keep this upper part right here, the prefrontal cortex, where we do our higher order thinking. We want to use this. We might say, yes, I hear a siren. Why don't we all go into the kitchen and close the door, or we'll go in the restroom and close the door, and then we'll sing some songs as we sit on the floor. We can stay calm as we respond even to what seems like emotionally challenging or dangerous situations. And when we broadcast that to the children, they will follow. Let me say this again. When we optimize our own heart rate variability, we are able to broadcast that to the children and the other adults. And we're able to calm and we're able to soothe ourselves, and they are able to follow. We use that so much in our practice. We do a lot of trauma work. You know, clients who are involved in child protective services, they've been abused, neglected, whatever. We use this so much that sometimes they'll just call to listen to the answering machine, and when they hear our voices, they get the calm. It reminds them of how to get back to it. So all of you working with the young children, I encourage you to explore this heart rate variability, practice this technique, take a look at bringing the yoga into the classroom, the breathing, the mindfulness, and learn more about metacognition. We have a training about how to teach metacognition to young children. It's powerful. And we get children overcoming trauma and anxiety very quickly because we're bringing all these things to bear. And I want to be clear, every one of these things I've shared with you today is an evidence-based practice. There is research supporting all of them. Plus, we have practice-based evidence. We use all these things in our practice, and we have good results. So I want to recap. We talked today about using our innate human superpowers to ease trauma for self and others, because we figured out that the traumatized individual has some big shifts in their brain, and they're not good shifts. And it causes these people to be in a constant state of arousal and to basically be in a state of emotional free fall that can last for hours, days, weeks, months on end. We know now that trauma really is a brain thing. It really is a brain thing. And we want to learn ourselves to use our own human superpowers, but we want to also enact others and enable others to use their own human superpowers. We want to go with the flow of the trauma and bring in these positive psychology, mindfulness based tools that go with the flow. So, just like water follows the path of least resistance and goes downhill, all of these strategies that I shared with you today work with nature, not against it. We're not asking somebody to suck it up, just deal with it. I don't care that you were bitten by a dog. You're going to go into the petting zoo and there are dogs in there and you're going to pet these animals. No, we don't force anything. This is going with the flow. This is gentle, loving, encouraging. This is the way to move a person from their trauma state to a calm, more focused and alert, higher order thinking state through love, through caring, through compassion, through mindfulness, through all the positive things that positive psychology has to offer. We know that some of our most powerful human superpowers are the senses, that when we connect people to their senses, when we ask them to use their senses to notice what's in the room, or we give them sensory experiences, we use aromatherapy, spicy gum. We might have them touch something that has a beautiful texture. We might do a couple of these things all at the same time. We could get the brain so engaged in sensory experiencing that it tends to calm down from the trauma state. We know that we really want to encourage people to think about their own superpower selves, because everyone in society, in this society at least, knows about superpowers. We know about heroes. There's Marvel and there's the universal world. We have Spider-Man and Batman. There are so many superheroes. It is ubiquitous. So we can actually leverage that now and encourage children to find a superhero they love, or create one, or be one, and then encourage them to start using superpower thinking and feeling and problem solving. And that is a powerful way that we can turn on children's ability to be more effective, more focused, more able to care for self. They are able to be more spontaneous and respond to a situation based on the cool things that they've observed other human superpower people doing. And of course, we want to turn on the imagination. When we can connect children to imagine amazing and wonderful things, pictures of them maybe being on the beach, playing in the sand with their friends, having cotton candy, listening to music, going surfing, or maybe they want to pretend they're at Disney and they're on the rides with their friends, or they're meeting Minnie and Mickey, or riding on a princess coach. When we turn on the power of the imagination and we encourage the children to really feel the feelings that go along with that imagination, I want to be clear, the brain doesn't care. You can let the brain sit and stew about the traumatic thing and worry and create all those negative, harmful neurotransmitters and hormones of stress and distress. Or you can say, well, trauma happens, but we can engage the power of the imagination and have them think about and focus on and imagine going to wonderful places and doing fabulous things with people with whom they care about. Maybe a superhero, a celebrity, a fictitious character, somebody from a book. It doesn't matter. Have them use their imagination. It is just as valid, and the brain doesn't care. The brain will take either version. So teach children to create a version inside that gives them better feelings about who they are. You can be honest that it's an imaginary thing. I'm not asking you to tell children that Mickey Mouse is real. I'm suggesting that we say we're going to be using our thinking brains. We're going to imagine something wonderful so that we create good feelings inside ourselves. And children really can do this. So for today, all of this material is available at this website, orchardhumanservices.org/trauma. You'll be able to download lots of things, and there's also an opportunity if you want to earn a certificate to another free training in the future if you'd like. So find it there again at our website, orchardhumanservices.org/trauma. My information is in the downloads, and this has been the presentation of Human Superpowers to Overcome Trauma. And I'm so excited that I got to be with you today. I zoomed through this to leave time for questions because there were some. So I'm going to stop sharing and let's jump into the questions. Zuli, what do we have?
All right. Well, there's no questions. Someone unmuted? All right, share with us your question.
So let's ask someone who has a question or a comment. You're all brilliant child professionals. You have insights, you have experiences. Tell us about a time that you used one of these techniques. Tell us how it worked. Or ask a question. Who has something to share? And if not, I'm going to start talking to people at random. Here I come. Amy, what have you got for us? You have been so engaged. Thank you so much for being here and being engaged. I love that you did that. What have you got for us, Amy?
I think the biggest disconnects I have as mental health is the teaching staff looking at us as rewarding children for bad behavior, and trying to help them see that we're giving them what they need, maybe not what they deserve. But that's always the thing, is feeling like the kids are being rewarded when we're not doing any kind of disciplinary action. So
you are so correct. When I was teaching special ed, I think I told you I was the cleanup crew. Like if they couldn't handle the kids, I would go and get the children, right? And I always wound up doing fun things with them because I had to get them out of their trauma state, because every child who's acting out badly is a child who has something unpleasant happening inside of them, and they need to be calmed and comforted and reassured. So I thought, oh, the teachers are going to love this, right? Do you know what they used to say behind my back? Oh, that Miss Darleen, all the other children want to go with her. She disrupts my classroom. All she has to do is walk by and they want to know why she's not coming for them, right? So I feel you. But here's what I would love for the teachers to know. What Amy is talking about is so correct. If the child is acting badly, they are in distress because they want to be loved. They want you to approve of them. They want you to think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread and lollipops. And if they're acting out badly, they are in stress and distress. And so what we have to do is we have to help them start to feel good on the inside. They are producing stress hormones like nobody's business by the time they're disrupting, acting out, carrying on. And so Amy goes in there and she helps them turn off the stress hormones. She helps connect with them. So they're going to make the social bonding hormone oxytocin. And by the way, when they create more of that, they're going to actually care more about what you think about them. And when the oxytocin goes up, the stress hormones, especially the cortisol, comes down. So what Amy's talking about is the mental health professionals have to go in there and use these powerful tools to change the biochemistry and the neurophysiology of the child to get them to be able to engage and be in the classroom. Then, when they're a little bit more calm and focused, we can talk about a discipline. And I want to be clear, discipline is about teaching, not about punishing. Just, Amy, tell us about that. I know you're an expert on this. Tell us about that part, please. Discipline is about teaching.
Right. We don't want to punish them because these things are not in their control. So either natural consequences or trying to help them work through their feelings.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing that Amy uses, because all of us mental professionals, health professionals do, and most of you educators and childcare professionals do as well, we use differential feedback. So I thought it was hysterical when you were rolling on the floor. It was really, really funny. I didn't like that you did it during nap time and it woke up the other children. And I felt really sad about that because some of the children really needed to rest. But I think it's really funny. So how about we plan on doing that funny rolling around thing when we have recess or when we go out to play? And we provide that differentiated feedback that helps the child make those little adjustments so they know the part that they can keep. And then we give them the rules and the boundaries, the guidelines for how they can do it. And then we help them adjust the part that we want them to kind of extinguish or make go away. So thank you so much, Amy. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with us today? Thank you. Thank you. Let's pick somebody else. Lynette, how about you? Please share something with us. Sure. Sure. So glad that you're here. Hi,
I'm
Lynette.
here. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good. I am trying to multitask here. Let's see, where'd I go? I've got 3 people emailing me. Sorry. Yeah, there it is. I don't even know, like, I know that mental health is, I took this partly because I work with I work with families that have trauma, but I also did it for a personal reason. My son deals with PTSD and trauma, and I wanted to learn more about how that really affected his development and his how he learns.
Thank you for sharing that. So I want you to know that you can actually buy a piece of equipment to check your own heart rate variability. They're $100 or $200. I don't remember. The only thing I found out is that the dongle for it that goes on the computer didn't like being washed and tied and put through the dryer. So I guess I got to get a new one. But you actually can do that.
Really?
Work on your own heart rate variability. Now, my girlfriend and I did. My girlfriend's like, she's in her 70s, right? I'm in my 60s. 2 old broads who've been meditating for many decades, right? So when we did it, we had it right away. Like we got that thing down really low. We got our heart rate variability way up high. But for some people, they don't. And do you know this stuff is so powerful that there's even been research doing this in, are you ready for this? Juvenile detention centers. When we teach the guards and the police, the juvenile police officers in juvenile detention centers to maximize their heart rate variability, they are able to spread calm, just like I used to do in the special ed classroom. So I
Wow.
encourage you to do this for your son. And you can
Yeah.
him too. It's really simple. One little clip goes on the ear and one around the wrist, or at least that's the version I had. I think they have more expensive ones. I got the one that was a couple $100s, but it's a real deal. It's real science. So heart rate variability will be very important for you, especially for your son. And you can do little classes and workshops for the parents and start to teach it to them as well. And what I love to do, you may already do this, I'll put up little posters around the centers when I work with centers about the positive things we're teaching the children, and then have them send it home like a sunshine notes to the parents. So we get the parents all talking about the same thing, like, oh, hand to the head, hand to the heart, feeling good from the start. Like we say these little things, and then everybody in the school says it. And before you know it, the parents start mimicking some of this. And that is when you start spreading the calm and the peace and the love across an entire community. Lynette, thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad you mentioned that. Is there anything else that you wanted to share today?
Thank you. No, I'm good. Thanks.
All right, I'm zooming through. Unless somebody wants to jump in, I'm going to zoom through and find another person. Charlene, I know you're here. Are you able to talk? Okay, Christina says some of our pre-K classes use Cosmic Kids Yoga, right? So, Christina, here's my thing. If it is too engaging and fun, do you know the song about Tigger? But the most wonderful thing about Tigger says, I'm the only one. It's so engaging, right? By the time we're trying to do yoga with all the woo stuff, and I joke around about the goat yoga, but it's a real thing, right? I actually have a friend who does goat yoga. We have to teach yoga as a mindfulness practice. So again, if you can only do it for 20 or 30 seconds, I promise you 20 or 30 seconds of engaging in a mindfulness practice will expand the individual's ability for calm and focus. And that big thing, distress tolerance. Remember this, folks, distress tolerance. Amy, are you with me? Distress tolerance is like the number one thing for these children to get them to handle their distress so they're not freaking out. It's huge. So I love cosmic yoga, but it doesn't qualify as the mindfulness thing that I'm talking about that will help overcome trauma and help the children get a hold of their feelings and their distress. The materials are available. The hand, head, heart hold. This training is recorded, so you can go back and listen to it again if you want to. I don't know that I did the head and heart hold in the presentation because the presentation that you have is the one I just shared with you. However, you will also see when you go to my website, orchardhumanservices.org/trauma, you will see that there's an opportunity to engage in a little activity, and then you can get a certificate to do another training. We offer trainings all the time, and our nonprofit invests heavily in promoting early childhood. So we offer trainings all the time because this is the best way we can make a positive impact in our community and in our country. We don't just want to help individuals one at a time. We want to make a big impact. So there is an opportunity to access other free training as well. So you could pick one of the trainings on that if you wanted to. I hope that answered your question. Thank you so much. So we have like 2 or 3 minutes left. Zuli, hi.
Yes, this has been incredible. Thank you everyone for participating. If there's any other question, probably can give you 1 more minute and we're gonna do a wrap up. Any other questions? Oh, this has been awesome. Thank you, Dr. Darleen, for sharing all these amazing, effective, meaningful strategies to implement and use in the classroom every day, every time, at any moment. Thank you for all for attending this webinar. As usual, I would like to invite you to take action with information you received today and share the information with your staff, colleagues, and families. I believe knowledge is power when it's implemented and shared. So please help us spread the good and be light to others. I want to thank all the members for supporting our mission. If you would like to be an NHSA member, please visit our website. The link is in the chat. Our next webinar is on Thursday, July 7th at 2 p.m. Preventing picky eating from first bites with Dr. Fernando. Great topic, don't miss it. For those attending live, you have the certificate link in the chat, valid for 1 PD hour. Click on the link and get your certificate for today's webinar. You also have the survey link for today's webinar in the chat. We want to hear from you and how we can better support you. All right, superhumans, superheroes, super teachers. Thank you again, Dr. Darleen. This was an awesome information. You took me back when I was in the classroom and I was doing yoga with my kids, because I did. So early Head Start family and community, remember to use your superpowers. This is all for today. Please be safe. Let's keep rising together. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.